Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our board chair check-in and update meeting. My name is Marie Newton, and I will be your moderator today. In order to avoid background noise, I ask that you please mute yourself if you're not speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. If you have a webcam, we welcome you to turn it on so we can make this more interactive. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under Services. And now I'd like to introduce Patrice McCarthy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy afternoon in your communities as well as at the state legislature. As we speak, the Appropriations Committee is deliberating the proposed state budget for 2023-2025. And they 5 minutes ago started the discussion of the education portion of that budget. So while I am not going to give you a full legislative update, we will be doing a webinar on Thursday at 11 a.m. where we will focus on the budget components. And then the Appropriations Committee will be meeting on both Thursday and Friday to discuss various bills that implement the budget. A couple of key things that we know from the budget document that we have obtained is there is additional funding in the ECS grant that we don't have the specifics of how that would be distributed at this point. That is still under discussion, but there's 150 million more than the governor had proposed, and that would allow for the acceleration of the move to fully implement the bipartisan ECS agreement that was reached in 2017. There are also funds that would maintain the ECS funding for those towns which are deemed to be overfunded, not a term I like to use because I don't think any community is overfunded in education, but under the formula as it was agreed upon, those towns would be facing a reduction in funds. This budget would maintain them at their existing levels. There are also funds for additional grants to the existing charter schools, money for the promotion and marketing of teaching, funds for 3 forensic analysis positions to ensure school district financial transparency. We're not really sure what that would look like. Those positions would be at the State Department of Education. And we do know that quote unquote transparency has been a priority of many legislators. I think given the uniform chart of accounts that districts have been using for several years, there already is an awful lot of what I would call transparency. The budget from the Appropriations Committee does continue the caps on the various grants, particularly the Special Education Excess Cost Grant. So in a nutshell, the other bills that we've been following are now, many of them are out in what's known as file form, fully drafted form, but we know that they have all been described as they came out of committee as works in progress. So the language we see at the moment certainly will continue to be subject to change. Dennis, Deborah, or Leonard, do you have any questions on legislation?
Not at this time. It is interesting to hear about the $150 million. I'm not sure. I'm sure a significant portion of that will end up going to the metropolitan districts, shall we say? I know.
I think that would be fair to assume, yes.
Right. Us rural districts. I'm the chair for Regional District 11. Mm-hmm. And we're really struggling. We're struggling. Yep. The ECS cost grant it's hitting us very, very hard this year. We have a $6.5 million budget, and we have over $500,000 of unexpected special education costs. So that's, It's devastating to what I will call regular education.
Yeah.
And that's our biggest concern at this time. I just want to thank you very much for the information that you've shared.
Well, you're welcome. And that is why we continue to make the removal of the cap on the special ed excess cost grant our very high priority, because that would benefit every single district, large and small, urban, suburban, and rural, and would restore, if the cap were removed, it would restore the safety net that that grant was intended to be for districts, so that you are not putting in jeopardy programs for your regular education students because of the costs of special education.
Right.
Yeah, Patrice, thank you for that feedback. I think one of the concerns that I'm going to be looking at is obviously one, the rural that was just mentioned.
Yep.
But also magnet school funding. And what does that funding look like, and will it be adversarial to school districts across the state? I'm definitely looking at it with a sharp focus, as we're aware. Bridgeport was against 5003.
Yep.
And they really mentioned that the magnet school problem for them, and it's upside down for them no matter what. They're in a no-win situation with this piece. And if I would like to see exactly where the funding goes as far as the rest, and to see how the magnet schools are going to be supported in relationship to all the other public school districts in the state. And that will be a telling sign of how it comes out of not only education, but the appropriations committee on where their focus is. The jury is still out on some of that, but we have to make sure that the public school districts have a strong foundation within their respective districts, and to make sure that they're not fighting a losing battle with the rest, where these kids are leaving out of their district, going to these the rest, and they're still stuck with being able to provide the infrastructure and for their kids without the appropriate funding, and all the funding would have to come from their local district without the appropriate support from the state. So I know I said a lot just to say, the magnet school funding is going to be something I'm going to be looking at very closely. And I'm sure a lot of towns in the state are doing that as well.
Absolutely. And that's one of those details that we don't know where in the $150 million ECS increase, where that will be apportioned, because that was included in the original House Bill 5003. The $150 million would not cover all of what was contained in that bill. So it is definitely falls into the category of the work in progress.
Yeah, a lot of the members of some of these committees are definitely publicly known as pro magnet, pro charter.
Yep.
And so that creates some angst for school districts across the state as well. So it's a wait and see process and see where we are, but we just have to keep advocating for all the school districts that we represent on behalf of CABE, to make sure that everybody's point of view is at the table as they deliberate.
Right. It's definitely an advocate and see process.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, I'm going to move along to our next topic that we had identified 2 more topics, and then whatever else is on your mind. We had a very successful webinar. It must have been just yesterday on book challenges. And we had a significant number of attendees. We did record that webinar, and it is archived on the CABE website. Jody Goler, our policy expert, was one of our panel members. And so, Jody, I don't know if you want to offer any insights that came out of that discussion.
No, it was, I thought it was just a very good, great being there with Paul and with Janice as well. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to delve into many of the issues that are occurring in our communities around books, and to ensure that we are, as school boards, that or as CABE, we're supporting school boards in their work to ensure that students have access to the materials they need to be critical thinkers and to have diverse access to those diverse materials. So I thought it was just very, very engaging. I got some interesting emails afterwards, and I responded to the emails that I got. And again, it's a complex topic, but it's something that people feel passionately about. And from a policy perspective, we want to make sure that we are providing the necessary policy support to help boards fulfill their purpose as board members.
Absolutely. And I think part of the discussion yesterday that focused on when boards have discussions about what their policies and procedures are for selecting material for curriculum for the school libraries, for reviewing that material, and the process where those individual books can be challenged. Having that discussion within the board not only helps inform the board of the procedures in place, but helps inform the community that in fact there are procedures, and that a large part of this lies, the responsibility lies with the professionals, the media specialists, the school librarians who are trained and have the qualifications necessary to review and determine what is age appropriate and school appropriate.
And as a result of the meeting as well, and thank you, Patrice, for that, that's exactly right. We're also looking at the policies we have that center on challenges and also the evaluation and selection of textbooks and instructional materials. It's been a while since CABE has reviewed its policies in these areas. And I think they were developed at a very different time when books weren't challenged. So it gives us an opportunity now to look at some other districts, see what they're doing, see what the policies are looking like, and to put a critical eye to the CABE policies, model policies that we're sharing with districts. So I would look over the next couple of months to see a new CABE model policy that's informed by some of the things that are going on today.
Terrific. Thanks, Jody. All right, our third topic was for an update on budget developments in your districts. We understand the process is still ongoing for most of you, but if you'd like to share with each other where you are currently, maybe successes, good news that you have, or the opportunity to commiserate about some challenges.
Well, as
Dennis?
far as yes, as far as Regional District 11, we're looking at just under a 3% increase over last year, and most of that is driven by unanticipated special ed costs. We are developing a transition program to try and reduce some of that spending through Jocelyn, our special ed director, as well as Superintendent Henrici. They're working very hard to reduce spending in those areas because the services, the outsourced services, are so expensive. I know a 3% increase might not sound like much, but in Scotland, Hampton, and Chaplin, any kind of increase is hard fought by the townsfolk. So, we came in as low as we possibly could, and we're retaining all active positions. We're not laying anybody off or letting anyone go. We're basically working with a bare bones budget as it is. So that's kind of the status from the quiet corner.
Not always as quiet as you'd like it to be, huh?
No, it's not.
Thanks,
But
Dennis.
our district is extremely well supported by our PTA and local local parents, and members of the town. So as long as we get out in force and voice our opinions that education is important and the youth is our future, hopefully we'll be able to get it passed.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Who else?
Hi, you guys hear me?
Deborah, sure, go ahead.
Hi, Deborah from Middletown. So we were looking at a 3.8% increase this year, and most of that was contractual. And so we had our meeting last night with Common Council, but we also had a workshop with them last week and or the week before. And they respected our budget. They liked how everything was laid out. They appreciated it. They also asked a lot of questions that had nothing to do with the budget. But last night when we had our meeting, pretty much everyone said that they were on board. You know, as Middletown and I'm sure other districts deal with behavioral issues in our schools, that was one of the questions to ensure that we were able to add that to our budget or to make sure we have something in our budget to cover those issues. And so the mayor is recommending a $500,000 cut. And so we're waiting on the feedback from Common Council to let us know if they agree or if they're going to keep our request at 3.8%. So that's where we are in Middleton.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, in Windsor, the board voted out a bipartisan budget of about a 4.84% increase. We took it to the town council, and I think some of them said they would have liked it to have been lower, but they all seemed to be in agreement that it was necessary based on circumstances, inflation, loss of some federal funds, special ed is also an area that we had a big jump during the year. So we have to shift around budgets for this year. So already we were building on a high number out there as well. Windsor, luckily, has had a very strong commercial tax base. So even though our budget of 4.84 will be combined with the towns, I think they're still only looking for about a 1% tax increase. That will be probably very different next year when we have revaluation, and that strong commercial percentage of commercial properties will be a little bit of a downfall next year, but that's where we are. And eventually in Windsor, the town council doesn't have the final say. The voters have the final say. We are a referendum town.
Okay. So you've still got a couple of more steps in your process.
We do.
Colleen?
Yeah, we had passed our budget back in, gosh, it was back in January. We were cut by our Board of Finance, which is our next step in our community, down to a 4.25 increase. And then I heard rumblings that the final body that votes on our budget, which is our town council, had concerns because, and I'm using air quotes, we hired too many staff people. So there were some misconceptions about what schools do nowadays. So what I did was I've invited, in fact, I had the second tour today. I invited our town council members to come in to our high school and to one of our elementary schools that also houses the largest preschool population and special ed population, so that they could see, you know, their experience from their school days are different than what we're doing now. So we had some pretty positive comments about why there is a need in our community, why cutting our budget is in anybody's best interest. And I'm feeling rather positive, fingers crossed, that when our town council does vote, they won't be cutting our budget any further. I've told them all, if they do, we're looking at layoffs, increased class sizes, and things of that nature that will be detrimental to the entire community. And I hope they have a better understanding now of what today's schools do and what's involved with it. So we're trying to educate the people that make the final decision. So
Good for you. And did you get good participation by your town council members?
I had 5 out of the 9.
Good.
Two of them never responded, and I sent emails and such. I also had a couple of members of our Board of Finance who expressed an interest in coming in. So I said, this is something I'm going to continue. Our community for years had been run. The Board of Ed presented a budget that was extravagant. It got cut and they made do. So I'm trying to get them to understand this isn't 20, 30 years ago. We're doing things differently. We're doing things methodically. There's no excesses in our budget. We're bare bones like everybody else is, so we're trying.
I really have to applaud you for taking those steps to invite, town leaders into the schools to see what it's like, because we run into the same problem as well, that they think that, when they went to school, when we went to school, there were 25 to 30 kids per classroom, and everyone was segregated, and it just, it's not the same. It's not the same. I mean, the curriculums are so challenging that having smaller size classrooms definitely helps the students tremendously. It's been proven.
Well, we've had this is kind of, it's sad, but it's the truth. I was told, well, you hired 11 psychologists with our BESSER funds. And I said, no, we didn't. We didn't. Yeah, you did. I saw, blah, blah, blah. There were these
Right.
psychologists. And come to find out, we had to hire, because of IEPs, 11 ABA therapists.
Okay.
And the person, a town councilor, thought that meant they were clinical psychologists, and
Right.
couldn't, they had no concept that what they do. So we brought them into the school where, unlike you, Dennis, we try to keep our kids, our special needs kids, in our district. We built
do as
programs.
much as we can. As
Yeah.
much as we can, we do, but there are some that we just don't have the facilities for.
Yeah, but what we've done is we've added the staff. We did a cost study for the past, I believe it was 6 years. We've saved $8 million. Our budget would be $12 million more than it was if we didn't have these in-house programs. And we showed our town councilors these programs, especially at the elementary school. They didn't know we had a preschool. They didn't know that. They didn't know that we have we try to get children at age 3, once they get out of birth to 3. We keep them in-house. We have a very robust special ed program through high school. We've done that intentionally and we heard at the CABE Day on the Hill, we heard about the costs that some districts are incurring because you don't have the in-house capability of servicing these children. So these are some of the things we're trying to educate people for what we do. And that was,
it's
our
critical.
visits with them. So
congratulations.
Hopefully.
I can't applaud you enough. That's awesome to get
well,
townspeople.
give it a shot. I mean, I can't say it's going to work. I'll let you know next month, but
well, I mean, I'm surprised
you're
you
trying.
had over 50% participation.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm pretty annoying when I want to be.
Good for you.
Thanks for sharing, Colleen. All right, I'm going to open it up now for anything that's on your mind that we haven't talked about, and any support that we or your colleagues can give you. Other than budgets, everything's good.
I
Yeah.
have a
I
question.
mean,
What are people doing as far as I know, after COVID, a lot of our students came returning back to school with social emotional issues and behavioral issues. I don't know if it's just my district, I'm gonna be honest. Um, is anyone seeing that an increase? And if so, what are you doing? I know there's so much that we could do as board members, but to support our teachers and to suggest or work with our superintendents to put some type of test, uh, some type of group together to try to alleviate it. But just was curious and wanted to hear what other districts were going through or if that's even a problem.
So I'm going to let the individuals respond, but I can assure you, Deborah, it's not just your district. You, from what I've read in the paper, you may be at one end of the spectrum in terms of acuteness or numbers of students that are experiencing severe behavioral issues, but we're hearing this all over the state. So I'm going to have David respond from the local level.
Yeah, in Windsor, we've seen it too. And we started the year in general with the kind of the superintendent's kickoff at convocation, and kind of trying to target families in each school that we know where there's been some problems. So they got a special letter from the superintendent outlining, in addition to the normal social work, every school's got a social worker and psychologist, but all schools also have social emotional learning coaches in each building, and we've kept that up with the federal funding. And every parent got included. So some students parents got that letter, and then all parents got a similar letter just saying that this is there's a lot of learning loss going on. We know kids have not been connected, so behavioral issues have increased, and we all have to kind of step up our game. Our teachers, our board, our superintendent, parents, students. We're all in this together, and there's been kind of a limited tolerance of fighting and other things that are going on. But again, our budget this year retains most of those social emotional learning coaches in all of our buildings. Some we were able to get into the regular budget because we know there is the fiscal cliff coming, and we're hoping 5003 will be not necessarily a savior, but a good gap before other issues regarding special ed can hopefully be addressed in future legislative years. But you know, I think we made a proposal for the CABE convention to have our social emotional learning group, because it's we've done, you know, a demonstration last year, in fact, for the state of what we were doing, where we were going. And it seems to really have made a difference. And a lot of it, in addition to the specialists, it's really all teachers taking time to connect with students. We still do home visits by parents. You know, parents are visited either home or in a neutral place in the beginning of the year, and often that money is available throughout the year to do more of that, of really trying to connect with students and connect with families. But you know, if someone does have an IEP or a 504 and has got behavioral issues, we still have to be sensitive to whether or not there's a manifestation of the action taken by a student was really a result of special needs, or was it they did happen to have an IEP and have special needs, but it was unrelated, the behavioral outbursts and things that are going on. So you're clearly not alone, Deborah, in what you're seeing, and we've advocated that to when we spoke to our town council, that we really feel this is a necessary program, just as we were very thankful that the lunch program, the free lunch and breakfast program was extended, that we need to have kids coming ready to learn, that they're healthy, and that they have, in addition to food supports, they have those behavioral supports there. Sorry to be long-winded.
Thanks, David.
No, that is definitely well said, David.
No, that was some good stuff, David.
One other thing. So RD11, we're pretty fortunate because our student body is so small that we actually, our counselor and school social worker, their workload is, they step in and wear many hats, but they're servicing approximately half of the kids that the social worker count should be, if that makes sense. So we have resources there that are able to help the students. Where we're focusing is just making sure that everyone is aware of the signs of different mental health issues. So our PTA sponsored an event, and this is the third session that we've had for mental health first aid, and it's supported by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing and the National Council for Behavioral Health. It's an 8-hour class, and we just had this last Saturday, and we had 15 people attend it, and 3 of those people were board members. So that was very encouraging. But what we also do is we bring them back to put on sessions for the staff, so that they're better equipped to identify students that are exhibiting issues with their social and emotional wellness. So we found that's really helped the staff in identifying different behavioral issues that should be addressed. And regardless of the help, maybe the student just needs someone to talk to, be it a peer group or a trusted member of the staff, or I mean, sometimes parents are the last ones to find out, right? I know I'm the parent of a transgender boy, and I mean, he came out to his friends, I would say, almost a year before we found out, and we are accepting and loving parents. So I can imagine, if there was any, hesitation, how we would have accepted him. Sometimes those peer groups and trusted adults at school are a valuable resource to keep these kids on track and healthy, both in body and in mind. So that's what we've been doing. The mental health first aid program it really is phenomenal, and it increases awareness. And I learned a tremendous amount. I mean, I always have seen myself as, being open-minded and with the times, but I'll tell you, there's always room to learn. And I learned a lot this past weekend.
Thanks for sharing, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Colleen, do you want to add anything?
We were talking today when we were doing the tour it was a 3-year-old preschool class, and the comment was by someone, couldn't tell which child was special needs or was atypical or typical because it's a mixed preschool class. But when we got out in the hallway, we were all commenting about the fact that kids now have lost a couple of years, especially little ones who had no exposure to the world. The 1 and 2 year olds are now 3 and 4 year olds in school, and they missed out on so much. We know there's going to be ramifications for a long time for these children. And I know as a district, we have support staff in place, just as, Dennis and David said. But I think people commenting, oh, COVID's over, it's back to normal, blah, 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 is great, except for these kids, it's not. And I think we're going to be dealing with what they lost for a long time. I don't think there's any way around it. You can't take away 2 years of a child's learning experiences without suffering some type of ramification. You just don't get that back. So I think we're all going to have to be cognizant, and I think we're going to have to make it known to our elected officials, especially the ones that hold the checkbook, that they've got to realize, yeah, the emergency may be over, but the repercussions from it isn't. So we're all in the same boat with you, Deborah. So that's the bottom line.
David.
What Colleen said reminded me of, I think, one of my first CABE conventions when I was first elected. And I think it was a workshop. I think it was Old Saybrook was the district, or if not, somewhere along the shore, that talked about that, most schools, they do vision test and hearing test, and not necessarily a testing for, kind of social emotional issues, and that they had developed certain, procedures or tests to connect with students at an early age regarding social emotional learning. And sometimes you may see a physically disabled person, but you don't know if somebody is dealing with social emotional issues or trauma, and they may be a good student, but still dealing with these. So the silver lining to me is hopefully more institutionalizing the need for social emotional support. We all have all kind of other systems we've had in place, PBIS, MTSS, different things. But to me, I'm hoping the positive here is to kind of institutionalize some of these things where you can learn, you can teach, ingrain in students about being empathetic, about being more social aware of themselves, of self-management, of self-awareness, and some of the CASEL attributes that's used. And I know Yale is also very big in this social emotional learning area. And to me, I'm hoping that, again, my hope of funding through 50003 or other ways, that there'll be those funds to have this, because that really, it's a needed building block for our kids. We all want kids to achieve at the highest level possible, but we need to give them those supports.
Deborah, I hope you feel a little less alone, having heard from your colleagues.
I do. I know it's something it's really throughout the US. I mean, I've seen stories in New Jersey where, kids are getting bullied, it's getting reported, and they're committing suicide. Like, just the violence in the school is just unbelievable at this time. And so, people always wonder, is the school safe? I know we have things in place, but it is good to hear what other districts are doing and what they're focusing on. I liked David when he talked about, the home visitors. And that reminds me, because we've identified in our school, one of our middle schools, maybe about 28 students that are repeat offenders. And I think that it would be awesome to do home visits to those people. And that's something I'm going to take back to my superintendent this week. So thank you, everyone, for your feedback. It was really good.
very helpful. And I would just point out that I think one of the important things about the Windsor, well, they call it home visit programs or family visits, that it doesn't have to be in the individual's home. So if the family is not comfortable having someone come to their home, they meet in the coffee shop, or they meet in the library, or they meet in the park, so that it is accepted by the family as, you know, it's not the school coming to inspect the living conditions. It's truly an effort to try and engage the family in supporting that student.
Yep, I agree.
Other issues that you would like help from your colleagues? I know, send more voters to your town to vote yes on the budget.
You know, at some point, I would hope that there would be kind of, it's not one size fits all of what may work, but kind of throwing out best practices. And if enough of our office, our school boards that are CABE school boards have ideas, there'll probably be some to say, okay, we haven't tried that one.
Yep.
Yeah, again, we always say in Windsor, we would have liked to have had universal pre-K a number of years ago when there was a state initiative that would have given us additional more money to build and have funds for teachers. And we couldn't get the budget passed to do it. And what we always say is we get about 20% if we're lucky at a referendum. But if, you know, 60% of parents would vote, you'd hope most of them, that they wouldn't all vote necessarily for the budget, but maybe 3/4 would, if we could ever get more people to do it. And it just seems we fall on deaf ears, even in years where in most of the years, it's not a question either of a Democrat or Republican budget. Usually the Board of Ed overwhelmingly supports a budget and the town council overwhelmingly supports a budget, and then we struggle still to pass a budget. So best practices to me would always be appreciated.
Good suggestion, David. Thank you.
And we have the same issue. And I mean, I don't think we've seen 20% of the voters turn out. Usually it's somewhere between 8 and 15. And they're the ones deciding on the future of our students. Then we do our best. I mean, we rally to try to get the word out. But I don't know.
It's an ongoing process, a year-round process of community engagement. But I do like Colleen's idea of bringing the local officials into the school during the budget. We always say, well, you should invite townspeople to celebratory events in the school play and things like that. But it's also very important that they see what's happening in the buildings right before they have to make decisions about funding. Yeah, David.
I don't know if Leonard is still on. He's our
Yes.
not only our
He's
not
there.
only he's not only our vice president, but if he would speak to one of the initiatives he plans to do. We know once the budget is proposed, we can't lobby per se the budget, but we can explain the budget. So if Leonard is available to talk about what he plans to do with our PTOs and our school governance councils, it might be something that may resonate with folks.
Leonard, you've got the stage.
All right, have to find the unmute button. So what we're going to do is going to take it to, once it goes through the town council, what they're going to propose, we're going to take it to the PTAs, the governance councils of each of the schools, and just explain it to them in very layman terms exactly what the budget is, what is the role of the board, what is the role of the town council, what is the role of the electorate, and how everybody has a role in the process. And we explain to everyone that we propose the budget, or the superintendent proposes the budget. Once the board votes on it, it becomes the board's budget. And then the town council, they can't tell us how to spend the money, but they can actually cut the recommended amount we get. And then it's up to us to then go to the electorate and say, hey, this is what we're proposing. This is what the town proposing. And it is up to you to decide what's best for the town. We cannot tell them to vote yes or vote no. All we have to do is just present the facts as they are, present the deliberations, and then obviously what you do within your own home, within your own caucuses, that's a totally different scenario. But as far as representing the actual Board of Education, we're going to take it to the public like we typically do. And sometimes that creates a lot of good feedback, but unfortunately, we're in a town that only 20 to 25% of the electorate comes out and vote. So, you're going to have some people in my town, about 800 people that are going to vote no, unless it's a zero increase. They're automatically going to vote no. So at least the good thing about that is, it. So that's built in. So what your strategy is. And, we have to be very, unfortunately, targeted. And we have to target the parent. And more importantly, we have to target the businesses. Because businesses don't want to be in a town that has a very poor school system. They don't want to be perceived as being in a town that don't support public education with the amount of funding or abatements that they get from the town council to be in the town. So it's a whole narrative that we have to actually to demonstrate, not make up, but to actually show this is your town government. And it's up to you to tell us exactly what you would like us to do. So those presentations usually take 60 to 90 minutes at each school. We have 4 elementary, 1 middle, and 1 high school. So I expect to do that. The elementary schools will probably buddy up together. So that'll be a total of 4 presentations that between the town council and it going to referendum sometime in mid-May. So we have a work cut out. It's another 4 or 5 now out for the superintendent and the business director. But we are the elected officials for the Board of Education. It is our job to advocate for public schools. It's not the town council's job, even though they feel like they can control what goes on in our town. But as far as Board of Ed, that's our job. And if we're not going to advocate, then who? So it's a lot of work, but you know what? We asked for the job and we just got to put in the work. Can't put it more blunt than that.
So I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but the PTAs and the PTOs, they can publicly lobby and voice their opinion, vote yes and vote no. And they a lot of times they have a much greater reach than we do as public officials. They're in everyone's homes, and I mean,
we have to be careful when we're representing the board in the public in a meeting like that.
Totally understand that.
Yep. And we have some people that use their private voice, even though they're board members, to publicly advocate too. So I just have to be very careful what arena I'm in, what I say, and how I say it, and to make sure that I'm quoted correctly.
Yep.
But
and
yes,
so
those
my wife,
and PTAs, yes, they can definitely get into the crevices and places that we just, unfortunately, there's guardrails there for a reason.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much.
A good call out, Dennis.
Thanks, Leonard.
Any final comments?
Patrice, what I want to say is that we've been talking about percentages versus actual, and I think Dennis brought up a great point. He's in a rural town, and a 4.84% in his town and a 4.84% in my town, which is 1.4 million. It's not relative, because in his town, that could be 15,000, that could be 25,000. But to Dennis, that $25,000 is the world. And it's almost like a life and death type of scenario. So when we talk percentages, I also like to put it into dollars and cents, because that's the way people think. And because a percentage can be spun in such a way that you can't really understand the magnitude of the impact. And we also got to understand, as Board of Ed members, we have a lot of work ahead of us. And we're the only entity that's held accountable are held accountable to our electorate when it comes to Board of Education. It's not the financing entity, it's not the selectmen, it's not the town council, it's not the state rep or the state senator. When the brunt of the frustration comes down, it comes down on us when we raise our hand to be elected Board of Education members. And we have to understand that. We have to control that narrative. We have to make sure that we strongly defend our position because no one else is going to do it, especially when there's other agendas that's at play. So I'm just encouraging you to remain encouraged. It's going to get harder before it gets more easier. I promise you, this is not going to be easy. And we're in I know at least here in Windsor, we're in an election cycle now. So it's going to start getting real political here in Windsor, and that's okay. If you're able to stand on the fact that you're doing what's right for kids and you're advocating for that funding and you don't get the funding, first thing I will be like, look, this is what I asked for. This is what you want me to perform. You want better test scores. You want better performance. You want more support. You want more programs. But when we ask for it and you don't come out to help and you don't support it through the referendum, or you don't hold the town council selectmen accountable, at the end of the day, we have to control the narrative. So keep up the good fight. It's going to get worse. I promise you, it's going to get worse. I try to be as optimistic, but I'm a realistic individual as well. This is not going to be easy. We don't know what the CGA is going to provide for us. But at the end of the day, let's continue to talk to our financing authorities and talking to the CGA and making sure that they understand exactly what we need in our districts. And here at CABE, we're here to support all you as Board of Education members. And if you need anything from us, Patrice and her staff is a phone call away. The Board of Directors, you can contact us as well if you want to speak to somebody one-on-one in regards to that level. But we're here for you. You're not in this alone.
Absolutely, Leonard.
You ready for this, Leonard?
I am.
Colleen.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Leonard said, because education of the electorate is so key. This year, not only did I invite the town councilors into our building, because we don't have to go through a referendum process or a vote for the budget, but we got parents involved. We invited them into our budget process to explain to them that if they start coming to our meetings in May, they've missed the boat because the decision's already been made by the town council. So if they want to see our budget supported, they've got to go to the Board of Finance meetings, which I was surprised. We probably had a dozen parents. We've never had parents there before. Parents showed up. It now goes to the town council, and we're telling parents, you have to show up now if you want to avoid any further cuts. But it's all about the education of people as to what the process is. Because come May, when we have to do our reallocation or our layoffs or whatever the case may be, don't come complaining then, because it's too late. We asked you to start with us, to work with us. So I'm going to be curious to see how we do come May. Hopefully we won't have any further cuts, but I'll let you know next month.
All right. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. More to follow.
We've tried to do the same thing in RD11. We've put out the calendar of events as far as the proposed budget and revisions, and invited public support, reached out to parents, asked parents to attend the selectmen meetings. We don't have a Board of Finance in Scotland, but we do in Chaplin and Hampton, and we just can't get the participation. I don't know if you have any kind of tips to really pique the interest of the public to show up at these meetings.
You gotta be type A personality and proactive. That's number one. Number two, if you gotta understand that if you have elementary kids, level kids, you probably got younger parents. They may have issue with childcare. Maybe you have to provide some type of a meal and childcare while you have a session like that. So when you get them, when their parents get home, mother and father get the kids home, that's one less thing they got to worry about. They can just transition them to getting them down, showered, bathed, get them ready for the night, instead of dragging them out from a meeting all day after working, and then may not have the childcare, and then they got to then go back home and then provide a meal. So, you could actually maybe send a brief survey, say, hey, if we want to just explain certain things to you, how could we make it easier for you? And just take a list of like a sample survey like that. And, it may cost some money to provide those services, but what is the return on the investment? So that's what you're looking for.
Dennis, one other suggestion. I mean, you're in a more unique situation because you've got 3 elementary schools, and we know that usually it's the elementary parents that are more engaged, with the PTOs and such. And maybe you need to reach out a little bit more to the elementary districts and see if you can get them to help advocate for the high school. I know that there's some, unusual feelings among some of your towns, but, you really need to unify them in support of the school to help as well, I think. Because the votes take place on at the local community level, whether it's for the regional school or not. So I don't know if there's a way of doing some of that.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Leonard, and thank you, Nick, for the perspective. Those are great ideas, and
don't
we'll try
underestimate,
and move
Dennis, don't
forward.
underestimate social media as well.
Oh, yeah.
Putting things out there. I've done
Yep.
dog and pony shows at PTO meetings. The superintendent, one student called him my sidekick, which I thought was kind of fun. But you got to get out there in multiple ways. Any way that you can communicate, somebody's going to pick it up, and they'll go to their first board meeting or their first PTO meeting or their first town council, whatever, just to see. Because if you give them that message, you need their help, and ask them individually, some of them will show up for you. So,
Well, thank you, everyone.
Well, with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. Thank you all very much for your willingness to share. And on behalf of the CABE Board of Directors and staff, we wish you success with your budgets and some sunshine-filled spring days ahead. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.